Hi, everyone. Chad Burton and Billy Tracio here from Modern Law Practice. As promised, we're going to be doing our weekly discussion on hot topics related to running law firms. And today we want to talk about the concept of a managing attorney. This is a challenging concept for most law firm owners in the sense that you get to a point where you want to practice less and work on the business part more and do the stuff that you think you like more than actually doing client work. But getting your firm there is a challenge. It's especially when you as the owner are the face of the firm, the lifeblood of the firm, started like it's you, and you bleed everything the firm. Getting somebody in to kind of take on that role can be a challenge. And so Billy has tried this in lots of different ways and run different, effectively experiments with, different roles. And so she's got, I think, a different take on it now that's going to worth talking about. So how you doing, Billy?
Good. Doing
Yeah,
good. Happy Tuesday.
happy to. Why not? Happy any day. So what are you doing now with your managing attorney role? Kind of where are you at with that?
Okay, so it's probably worth giving a little bit of background here. So I hate managing employees. You all probably hate managing employees. Like it's just hard. I don't really actually hate it. I really don't anymore. But um it is hard. It is the hardest part. It's the thing that I hated doing the most. And so very early on, I remember trying to figure out if I could just get somebody else to do it. And so I would just sort of task an experienced lawyer with the title managing attorney and be like, you do
Like
it.
knighting somebody to be you
You've
effectively.
been knighted as the managing attorney. That was terrible. Okay. Just in case anybody thought that would be a good idea, it's not. But yeah. So the first time was literally like that. You've been knighted. And then, she actually, it didn't work at all. And I had to actually let her go and it wasn't good. And then the second time I tried it was a little better. This was also a lawyer with some experience. She worked at the firm. People knew her. They liked her. They respected her. Um, and so I had her be the managing attorney. Now, people really liked talking to her. She was very good at connecting with the employees, but she didn't share the same vision. Like
Right.
at her core, she did not share the same vision of modern law as me or the way that I practice. So she hadn't been with me long enough to drink the Kool-Aid of how I like to practice. And the other thing that I've learned when new attorneys come in is they really like the idea of how I practice, but it takes a while to learn because it's so accommodating. It's so client centered and customer service centered and client feedback driven that most people don't learn that at other firms, and it takes a little while.
Okay, so those didn't work. Where basically you're trying to get one person to fill this role
Mhm.
of managing it, whatever the label, kind of like a COO or head of operations or head of people, kind of like one person. And so that didn't work so far.
Yeah,
Um,
so it's interesting that you say that because there's a ton of talk right now about integrators
right.
and EOS and traction and the concept of visionaries and integrators. And most of us want to be visionaries because that's the fun job. That's the job where you just get to sit around and think up new stuff and decide the direction of the firm. And then the integrator is the person that comes in and makes it all happen. Now,
Right.
is that the same thing as the managing attorney?
Well, I mean, if we talk about the way Traction approaches it, I mean, the titles could range from CEO to COO to general manager to like, I mean, it's really about kind of, I think, forming the role for the type of organization. And as we've thought about this and worked on this with different firms, like it has different flavors for every firm depending upon where they are and what they want to do with the firm. So there's not, I don't think there's like a hardcore answer on that, but it's close to it.
It's close to it, maybe.
Close. Yeah.
And the hard part is like, if lawyers take a long time to train,
Right. Because
whether
you're not,
they know what they're doing or they don't, it still takes a lot of energy to train them to be your flavor.
right. And so I just had this conversation this morning with one of our clients where when we're talking about this integrator role and the same challenge that you're talking about with those individuals in the past. I think I've got this right, but it's been a long time since I've read the E-Myth books. But the way the book started off was with the example of a cupcake shop person. It was like a hobby, and then they turned into, and so thinking going from technician to manager and all the different roles that you have to get to business owner, and then filling in the delegation piece of it. Like if you delegate, general manager duties to somebody in a cupcake shop, and I'm not disparaging, I would be awful at selling cupcakes probably, but like you're putting somebody in place that is running a store that has a certain product you're selling that is following certain rules, and that can spread into different stores, and you can have a person do that. Where law firms I think are different, like you said, like training a lawyer takes a long time, and you're not just training somebody on how to box up the cupcakes. There's professional judgment, there's rules that have to be followed, and so getting them to that right spot as far as being able to operate in the way you want is a longer haul for people. And if you don't, like you experience with a managing attorney, if you don't have that person that drinks the Kool-Aid of your style and refuses to do your style of things, it's just not going to work. And so
Yeah.
you're trying to replicate yourself, which is really hard. So
Right.
another approach, and I think kind of where you're at now, is maybe not trying to put that, eggs in one basket, or put that like one role to do all of it, but breaking it down into different pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where I'd found a lot more success. Deeming somebody the managing attorney and then sort of handing them duties like interview and train and like
Right.
broad categories of stuff is not going to work. But one of the things that we tackled as a firm was, how do we figure out how to better hire and train people? And so as part of that, we came up with much clearer interviewing and training protocols. And it was once we broke it down into actual instructions, then we could find out who in the firm could do what needed to be done.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the issue. So right now I've got one person who's great at training. Now I had named her the managing paralegal, but it turns out she's not good at managing. She's good at training.
Right.
So now I've got a different person that is mentoring the humans versus somebody who's really fabulous at writing down the procedures and training on the technical aspects. So, and then as far as lawyers go, I've got one lawyer who's really taken over the mentoring piece. Now, the nice thing is you don't have to train lawyers as much. Like their job is easier than training paralegals a little bit, because they've gone to law school. So they know a little bit about how to be a lawyer and how to practice within the court system. And for some reason, what we require of them technically within the systems is just simpler and easier for them to learn than what we ask the staff and the paralegals to do. And now I've lost my train of thought.
I think, well, what I'm hearing is that you're kind of in this interesting transition phase organizationally, where you're growing a lot, you're adding people, where before you could get away with having, where you tried out managing attorneys, but it always came back to you. And that's fine, because you're the person that, especially in a smaller organization, you're the person they came to work for. they're you're the face of it, all that kind of fun stuff. That doesn't necessarily need to change. And you're kind of teetering on this, like, and that I can see kind of, it's not tension necessarily, but kind of trying to maintain that feel that you've had but at the same time, how do you manage and deal with lots more people? And so it's the push and pull of not being too corporate-y and structure-y, I guess, versus like keeping the small kind of personable feel of the organization that you've had. It's kind of what it seems that's where you're going back and forth on.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. Clients need attention, employees need attention, and your business needs attention. And so as the law firm owner, you're trying to figure out, how do you give attention to all these things, and what do you like doing best, and how do you delegate that which you're not good at? And when delegating something as important as managing, how do you do that? I mean, it's still a work in progress. And I think the key is do it in smaller pieces.
Right. I think those are easy lessons that you've kind of learned from this, is that the more you try to offload it to one person and one chunk, it's just has the potential just not to work. But you can tweak. It's kind of like last week, calling back to the SEO discussion and marketing discussion, where you've tried it in different ways, and now you've broken it down into small chunks and have people that are doing, what they're really good at executing for you, and it's more of a managing it. So now you're doing the same thing, but on the people side, operationally, is breaking it down into small chunks and having the right pieces in place and people in place to kind of execute on that front.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know at what point does all of that become too much? I don't know. Haven't hit it yet.
Right. And I think what you'll end up seeing, especially as you add more people, is that there's likely that somebody that's going to emerge within the organization that has some of the skills to perhaps manage all those pieces, kind of going back to that integrator issue, where having somebody that can make sure that barriers are removed between different substantive areas of the business, making sure that deliverables are being happened. Like, somebody's going to come along that once they are established in the firm will probably, raise their hand, or you'll be able to, attempt to knight them into that role.
That's funny. So you think the integrator unicorn is going to emerge from within?
Maybe.
I hope you're right, Chad.
I think, it's slightly optimistic, but it's not forced is the key. When you try to force it, that's you're trying to get somebody into a role that's just not, they might sound good in their head and to you, but executing on it is different. So I think that as long as you're not forcing it, I think that's the best way to go, especially when you have an organization that is growing but is still small. That the people aspect of it is, regardless of size, is important. But when you have a small, tight-knit group, you want that person to emerge that has the respect of everybody, that wants to be doing it, that is good at doing it, and those aren't always there.
Right. So, and they have to believe the same things you believe. So
right, exactly.
Not an easy combo of things. I would love to hear from other people who have managing attorneys or integrators. I would love to hear from you. Like, comment, drop us a line. We'd love to interview you. So don't hold back.
Absolutely.
We'll talk again next week.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.